to see everybody back in the Lord's house this morning. How many glad you're saved today?
Amen.
Good to be saved. We're headed to heaven. The Lord's been good to us. Hope everybody had a good week, good Thanksgiving, good week spend time with the family. I appreciate the Lord letting me do that this week. Tell you what, I make a lot of memories like that. You know, I appreciate God being good to us, just letting us live another year. You know, this year's almost come and gone. Don't seem possible. Be a new year on us before we even know it. You know, God's let us live another year, give us health to be here, been good to us. And you know, a lot of times seems like we're not grateful enough as we should be, but we're to be praising Him every day for just still being here, being good to us, letting us be in His house again. Got your Bible this morning? Turn to the book of 1 Kings, chapter number 16. 1 Kings, chapter number 16. I ask you to pray for us this morning. Lord, help us a little while this morning. 1 Kings chapter 16. Begin reading down about verse number 29. We'll read down through the rest of the chapter. 1 Kings chapter 16, verse 29. And in the 38th year of Asa the king of Judea, began Ahab the son of Omar to reign over Israel, and Ahab the son of Omar reigned over Israel in Samaria 22 years. And Ahab the son of Omar did evil in the sight of the Lord above all that were before him. But you notice there's going to be some things said about this man Ahab in these few verses we're reading. It's not said about anybody else in the Bible. Hey, this man done some things that got under God's skin like nobody else ever did. I mean, he's a wicked man. And you'll find he's got a wicked wife also here in just a minute. The Bible said in verse 31, and it came to pass, as if it had been a light thing for him to walk in the sins of Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, that he took the wife of Jezebel, the daughter of Ethbaal, king of the Zidonians, and went and served Baal and worshipped him. And he reared up an altar for Baal in the house of Baal, which he had built in Samaria. And Ahab made a grove, and Ahab did more to provoke the Lord God of Israel to anger than all the kings of Israel that were before him. And verse 33 said something about this man. I don't believe you find in the Bible said about anybody else, any other king. The Bible said that he provoked God to anger more than any other king that Israel had ever had. Hey, we're talking about a man that's in a high position right here, a man of power, a man that was pretty much in control of everything. I mean, this man was in a position that he could have done some good for Israel, done a lot of good things. The Bible said that he angered God more than any of these other kings that come before him. Now, when you look at these two people we're going to talk about a little while this morning, Ahab and Jezebel, hey, they're probably two of the wickedest people you'll read about in this Bible.
Right.
Hey, you're not going to hear about anybody on the news that was any more wicked than this man and woman was. I mean, this is a husband and wife, and they done some things, man, that angered God in a way no other king ever had. There'd been some wicked kings before him, but they done some things that none of these other kings had ever done before them. And I got to wondering this week, what did Ahab do in his life that made God so mad, that angered God so much? And you get to look and he's got a wicked wife also. I got to wondering this week, I mean, there's a lot of things you could mention in Ahab and Jezebel's life that angered God. But I got to wondering if their home and their home life wasn't something that really angered God. I mean, there's a lot of things that could be mentioned about them. But I wonder if one of the main things is their home that angered God. I got to thinking, you know, when you get to thinking about this, the kingdom, after the death of Solomon, the kingdom had split. And you remember Rehoboam took the southern kingdom and Jeroboam took the northern kingdom. And there had been about 6 or 7 kings between the first king and Ahab. But there's something said about Ahab here that's not said about any of the other kings also. When these other kings are mentioned, their wife's name is never mentioned. But when Ahab's mentioned, Jezebel's name is mentioned also. So I wonder when God begins to mention this woman by the name of Jezebel, when he mentions these kings, I wonder if God didn't hate something that was going on in their home. I mean, you think about it. This man and woman had an opportunity to be an example to the community, to be an example to the nation. But God calls her name out as he never has before when he's mentioned any other king. And you know, I hear the statements a lot of times, we better pray that the devil's trying to kill the church, he's trying to kill revival. Hey, he's already killed revival because he's killing our homes. Right. I mean, you think about it, so goes the home, so goes the church. I've heard that all my life, and you can nail that down pretty much. I'm going to get somewhere with this in just a minute. But you know, a church will never rise above their local homes that make up our local churches. Hey, if the home's going bad, the church is going to go bad also. And I believe that's one of the major things that's going on in our churches today. Our homes are not doing what they should do. I don't care if Paul was pastoring this church, the Apostle Paul, or a church down the road. If the homes are not grounded right, and the homes are not doing what they should do, the church will never have the power it should have. Right. I mean, I don't care who you bring in, how much money you got, or anything like that. But I want to preach on the subject this morning of weak spots that causes a home to collapse. And I believe Ahab and Jezebel had some weak spots in their home that probably caused it to collapse. And I want to give you 3 things real quickly about weak spots before we get into this. Now, when you talk about the home, you know, the home ought to be a building just like the church is. It's something you have to have a good foundation. It's something you've got to build up the right way. If you don't, there's going to be some weak spots in it. I got to thinking there the last few days, you know, when you're building a building, you know, there could possibly at times be some weak spots in the construction. And those weak spots will show up when the pressure's put on a lot of times. I got to thinking about, and Brother Greg, Brother Lonnie probably tell you a whole lot more about this than I could. They've probably been around building or construction a little more than I have. But you take, when they was building this building right here, begin to put the walls up on it. Hey, they laid a foundation to begin with, but when they started up to the walls, they'd start putting those studs on the wall. And most of the time, if it's done right, they'll usually put those studs about 16 inches apart or so like that. Put them 16 inches on center. Now, you could go down this wall when it was being built. You could put them on 32-inch centers. Hey, that's not right, but it may look good. And it might look stable when that's going up. But man, when they begin to put the trusses on that wall and put the pressure down on it, something's going to happen. Hey, it might not show up that immediately, that quick or right when it happens. But man, when they begin to put that pressure, that roof on there, if those things are not set right, it could possibly collapse that whole building and it fall. I mean, you think about it. Let me ask you something this morning. What shows up in your home when the pressure's on? What kind of attitude do we have when the devil pops up and things begin to happen? You know, you ought to ask yourself, how do you and your wife respond when the pressure's on in the home? You know, whatever area that gets our home bent out of shape, that's exactly what the devil's going to attack. Whatever it takes to bend me and my wife out of shape, the devil's going to attack that over and over. And it happens that way with everybody. And you're talking about them weak spots when you're building something. You know, weak spots are a sign of a major problems to follow. You know, at first, probably when they put these trusses on this building here, if they weren't done right, those weak spots may not show up to begin with. It may take a little bit of time, but man, the longer those trusses sit on top of the building or whatever, that pressure is going to take toll on it eventually. May not show up to begin with. You know, it's possible this morning, man, that you could leave that load, like I said a minute ago, on that weak spot so long that building could have collapsed. Now, you might look at a wall when it's say, well, that wall there looks all right. Say that one looks all right. Well, what about the weak spots on that one and that one? What's going to happen when all that load gets put on top of it? Now, I'm going somewhere with this in just a minute, so just stay with us just a minute. Now, that weak spots could cause all these others to fall down. Hey, you may look up here this morning and say, well, my home or me and my wife aren't real good in these areas or these other areas. You know, the devil don't care about the areas that's good in your home. He cares about the areas that's got the weak spots that's not supported. That's what he's going to go after all the time. Give you one more thing about these weak spots real quick before we get in. These weak spots are something that should be corrected right away. Now you can put such a load, I said, on a building. When anybody's building, you can put such a load on a building if it's got weak spots. Hey, you can start to see maybe the sheetrock or the wood in the walls begin to pucker, begin to move. And you know, when that happens, something needs to be done. Something needs to be fixed real quick. But you know, until you fix that problem, you'll never, positive thinking won't fix it. Until somebody gets it in their mind that, man, that they need to get this thing tore down and get right to the problem and fix it. Hey, that's what we need to do at our homes when we get these problems. We can have this positive thinking all we want. But until we tear down some things and fix it, we're not going to see our homes get any better anymore. Hey, man, there's some weak spots if we ain't careful. A lot of folks said, well, my home don't have any weak spots. You better be real careful. I've heard a lot of good men that stood in the pulpit the last 10 or 15 years say, my home's strong, I'd never do this, I'd never do that. And now him and their wives are split, going different directions. Youngin's going this way, youngin's going that way. Better be real careful. The devil is rearing his head up on our homes like he never has. He's tearing them apart from inside out. Then our churches has all this going on. That's one reason we're not seeing the power we used to see. Where homes are not what they used to be. So I'm going to look at some things this morning about weak spots in our home. And you know, this is a tragedy right here in 1 Kings chapter number 16. There's a tragedy goes on in the home of Ahab and Jezebel. Man, I heard a man preach a message probably about 8 or 9 years back about Ahab and Jezebel. Well, it's longer than that. It's back when Bill Clinton and Hillary was in the White House. Heard him preach a message on Ahab and Jezebel back in the White House. I don't care what your politics are, but a lot of things lined up, man, just like this man and woman when those two were in the White House. Man, that these things goes on, that we need to realize how serious these things are and learn from this man and woman. I'm going to give you some reasons this morning that their home collapsed. Number one, I believe Ahab and Jezebel, they had a problem in their home because they had a divided marriage. You say, how do you see they had a divided marriage? Hey, Ahab was a Jew. He was one that's supposed to be worshiping God. He was the one that's supposed to love the God of Israel, the God that created everything. Now you look at Jezebel. Jezebel was the daughter of Ethbaal, king of the Zidonians. Now they were the crowd that created Baal worship. Hey, there's a divided marriage right off the beginning. You've got one that's supposed to love God, and you've got one that's a pagan worshiper. You've got one that's an idol worshiper. Man, there's no wonder their home collapsed. You may look up here this morning and say, preacher, you believe it's wrong for a lost and a saved person to marry? Man, I believe you ought to stay away from that. I believe that's one reason that our marriages and our homes are collapsing. We've got lost people marrying saved people. And you might look up here this morning and say, would you consider marrying a couple like that? Hey, if I know one of them was lost for definite, I'd try my best to stay away from it. Because, man, there's a good chance that marriage will never last. There's a good chance that marriage is going to collapse, and there's some reasons for that. You got one lost and one saved. You got one that believes one way, and you got one that believes another way. Hey, this marriage is going to have the wrong foundation. It's never going to be on 16-inch centers. It's never going to be properly put together. Hey, there's going to be pressure right from the start when that marriage takes place. Hey, we ought to tell these little girls this morning. I know there's not one in here by my daughter, but we ought to have the boldness enough to love them enough to tell them, man, when they begin to seek out a mate, and they begin, man, to want to maybe date, want to see boys and stuff like that, we need to tell them they need to marry somebody that believes like they do. Hey, I don't want my little girl back there marrying nobody other than a Baptist. You say, well, that's real dogmatic. No, I don't want her marrying somebody that believes she can lose her salvation. Hey, I don't want her marrying somebody out of a church of God or something like that. I don't want her marrying somebody that believes in water baptism. Man, she needs to marry somebody that believes this doctrine of the Bible just like she does. Hey, they're going to ask for trouble from the start to finish if they marry somebody that don't believe this book the way they do. They're going to be headed for trouble. Hey, they're going to wind up having maybe the husband or wife going to one church and the other one going to another church. And they're going to raise children that are going to be confused, never know what's right, and die and go to hell. Hey, man, we need to get these things back down to where they're at. Man, we've got this thing, seems like folks are just wanting to come together, one world church, one world government, everything coming and going. Everybody believes just the same, but man, it don't work like that. Hey, these mixed marriages, when they're lost and saved, never does nothing but lead to fights. It leads to confusion. It leads to fusses. And man, you say, well, you're getting real personal about that. Hey, man, this would never work because they had an unequal marriage. I believe right off the bat, when this man and woman married, Ahab stepped out and got away from God. And more times than not, when you see marriages like that, a lot of times one or the other will pull either the husband or wife out of church. I mean, it gets to the place they think it's not worth it. Hey, we need to tell these young people, marry right, your marriage will be better. I mean, no marriage is perfect. There's going to be problems and trials. But man, when you got a God in heaven to help you through things, it makes things a whole lot easier. Now here's Ahab and Jezebel. They've got an unequal yoke. One's a Jew. One's worshiping idols, Baal worshiper. They got started off right off the bat wrong. Look at another weak spot in Ahab and Jezebel's home. Hey, I believe they detested authority. Hey, they didn't like anybody telling them what to do. You look at Jezebel's name and see what it means. Her name means unmarried. Hey, in other words, if you look at Ahab and Jezebel's life here in 1 Kings, you know, in other words, when it come time to make decisions, Jezebel just acted like she wasn't married and made a lot of decisions without talking to Ahab. Hey, she made a lot of decisions on her own, and it seems like she didn't care about Ahab, whether or what he thought about anything. She just made decisions and never submitted to authority. Hey, Ahab ought to have been an authority in that home. He was the man of the house. God put the man over the house, put him over a woman. Hey, he didn't put her over a woman to beat her down. He put her over a woman just to be the authority. The Bible says a woman is the weaker vessel. Hey, she's a woman ought to be strong. Man ought to love his wife. But the man was put over a woman in the beginning. And we ought to tell these young boys something also this morning. We're talking about the girls. You know these young boys, when they begin to want to see girls and they want to date, they think about getting married. Hey, we better tell them that they better look at this girl and see how she submits herself to authority. See how she submitted herself to her parents when she grows up. Hey, see if she was all the time griping, all the time criticizing her parents, the way they made her live right, how they took her to church. Hey, you better be careful with these girls, man, that's not willing to do anything that mom and daddy says. It's not willing to submit to the authority of the house of God, to the pastor, willing to support, to the authority of her parents. I mean, if you run into a girl like that, man, you better run the other way. If they're not willing, when they're growing up, to submit to God, they're going to make your life miserable. It's going to be a hard marriage and it's going to be rough. I believe God hated Ahab's home because they detested authority. Hey, nobody was going to tell them what to do. Ahab, man, let her pretty much run their home. You can look in 1 Kings chapter 21 and verse number 8. And there's some things going on there that proves that. There was a time, man, that the Bible said that Ahab wrote letters and signed them in Ahab's name. Now this was when some problems was going on with Naboth, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. But here's a woman that's signing her husband's name. And you know, us as men this morning, we ought to stop for just a minute. And we ought to be ashamed probably a lot of times the way we've done things. Our wives are the weaker vessels. And every one of us, a lot of times, we don't realize that. We put things off on these women in order to never be put off on. Hey, us as the men, we ought to be the one making the money, ought to be the one supporting the family. But more times than not, we put a lot of these things off on the women, taking care of the business, carrying the checkbook and different things like that. Man, I appreciate my wife. Man, they've been times over the last 19 years we've been married. Man, there's times, most of my life, I worked on one job at Summit for 23 years, worked there most of the time, 11, 12 hours a day. Leave there and go work somewhere else for 2 or 3 hours. Didn't have time to get anywhere much. She had to take care of a lot of the things that I couldn't do, and I appreciate my wife doing that. Took a little bit of load off me when I couldn't get to these places, but we put a lot of things on them that shouldn't be on them. We ought to be the men. We ought to stand up and take that place. Here's a man and woman, though, that didn't like authority. Didn't like nobody telling them what to do. You know, our homes are collapsing today because we've got an authority problem. Hey, we've got moms and dads that don't want anybody to tell them what to do. They don't want the preacher to preach the truth to them. Hey, man, we've got moms that don't want the dad or the husband to lead them in the right direction with authority and tell them this is what we need to do. Man, we got kids that don't want anybody to tell them what to do. We got a nation, man. You look at our nation, man, they detest authority. Hey, we got a nation right now that hates the police officers and everything coming and going, authority figures. Hey, we wonder why our homes is in the mess they're in. A lot of folks detest authority anymore. They don't want authority. You know, Abraham didn't, if you look at Abraham, he didn't mind over in 1 Kings chapter 22. He didn't mind preaching as long as it wasn't offensive. Or it didn't have any authority in it. You look at 1 Kings chapter 22, Ahab listened to 400 prophets and never got mad. But these prophets were handpicked by him and Jezebel. They were told what to preach. They were told what to say. But when Micah and Elijah popped up, Ahab didn't like the authority. Right. He didn't like them telling him and Ahab what God said he was going to do. They didn't like that authority. You know one thing, I mean, in these verses here, how that Ahab listened to those liberals. Man, you know why all these liberal churches and these non-denomination churches we see on TV, why a lot of them's growing so big? There's no authority comes out of the pulpit. There's no preaching comes out of the pulpit that has any power behind it. Right. Hey, man, they hate this stuff. They hate authority. Man, you get in a lot of these churches, I've seen it down the year. There's folks, man, in some churches just don't like authority. Man, some folks will cut my head off this morning for preaching like this. Man, some churches will have a Jezebel in them pop up, try to run the man of God off, try to run anybody in the church off that wants to tell them what's right out of this book. Hey, these liberal churches, man, are growing like crazy because there's no authority coming out of the pulpit. Hey, man, you look at a lot of these churches, they've got every board set up coming and going and running the house of God. Hey, God never set his church up to be run by any board. He put a man in each church to stand up and preach. Man, he put a man in each church, man, to have a little bit of authority around the house of God. Ahab and Jezebel didn't like none of this. God never ordained any of this stuff. And you know, us as parents this morning, we better be real careful when we detest authority. You can go to 2 Kings chapter number 9 and find out. I'm not going to take time to turn there, but it's in 2 Kings chapter number 9. Ahab and Jezebel had a boy by the name of Jerome. You know what happened to this man? There was a man came along, one of God's men by the name of Jehu. You know what he done to Ahab and Jezebel's boy? Killed him. Shot an arrow through him. And you know why Jehu told him he was doing that? He told him that your mama's full of hoarders. And your mama's full of witchcraft. You can go to 2 Kings chapter 9 and verse 22 and find out there. He pretty much called his mama a whore and called her a witch. Hey, this woman was full of idolatry, full of whoredoms according to the Bible. So wicked that this man even killed their son. And man, Elijah done and predicted and told them what was going to be the end of Jezebel when it all come around. He told them what was going to happen to her. The dogs were going to eat her. Hey man, they detested spiritual authority. Man, how'd you like to have a preacher like Jehu was? Looked that boy straight in the eye and said, your mama's full of whoredoms and full of witchcraft. Hey, that man had a backbone. You know, spiritual things will produce submissiveness in our lives. Man, we need to submit to authority, the rule of this book of God. But man, we've got a man and woman here in 1 Kings chapter number 16 that wanted nothing to do with authority. You look at another weak spot in Ahab and Jezebel's home. They were disrespectful to other people. You remember over in 1 Kings chapter number 21, there was a man by the name of Naboth that had a vineyard. Hey, old Ahab wanted that vineyard. Got to looking at it. Man, he got to drooling over it. Wanted that vineyard. He told Naboth that he said that he wanted to buy it. Told him he'd give money for it. He'd even give him more than what it was worth. Naboth said, I ain't giving up my heritage. He said, I'm going to leave this for my family. I ain't going to quit. I ain't going to give it up. Hey, we need some men like Naboth that won't sell out. Didn't sell his family's heritage out. Didn't sell out what his children needed when he was gone. And you find out that old Ahab began to have a pity party. Went home. Began to whine around to Jezebel. She said, what's the matter with you? Hey, she said, that Baptist down there by the name of Naboth won't sell me his vineyard. Said, I want that vineyard bad. I want it bad as I've ever wanted anything he won't sell. Went to pouting. Went to bed crying. Jezebel pretty much looked at him and said, I'll take care of that. Hey, you go over there to 1 Kings chapter 21, you'll find out that Jezebel done some things that were really wicked. Hey, we're talking about Naboth. He was a good man, a Christian. This is where Jezebel started signing the letters and putting Ahab's name on them. Hey, she sent letters out through the community, sent them to the church people telling lies on this man Naboth. Hey, she had men go before the people of the community, before the church, and tell them that this man had been blaspheming. Told lies on him. We're talking about the queen here, talking about Ahab's wife. Went to lying about this man. Went to telling tales on him. Hey, man, this thing got pretty bad, man. They disrespected this man. And you know what the people of the community done? They took this man out and stoned him and killed him. Because she told a bunch of lies. Hey, Ahab got his vineyard. But it was because of a wicked woman. Because they disrespected other people. Hey, they disrespected this man so much and lied about him. Had the prophets of Baal lie. Man, we need to respect others. Hey, that's weak spots in our home that'll fall. We need to respect each other as husbands and wives. Hey, we're told in this Bible we're to love our wives as Jesus loved the church. He laid his life down for it. We are to respect them that much, honor them that much. Here's a man and woman that had disrespect for those that they're supposed to be leading. Hey, that was a weak spot in their home. Hey, another weak spot in their home. Hey, they both despised real preaching. Hey, you'll find when a man by the name of Micah and a man by the name of Elijah both tried to preach to Ahab. He hated it. Hey, Jezebel hated it. You remember Elijah was a man that come and told them that it wasn't going to rain till he said so. You know what God done? He sent Elijah down to the brook Cherith, took care of him down there, fed him. Then sent him to that little widow woman's house. She took care of him also. And then we're talking about a man by the name of Elijah that went up on Mount Carmel up against 400 prophets of Baal. backbone. And you know, remember the prophets of Baal was up there crying out to their gods and cutting themselves, making all kind of noise. They were trying to cry fire down from their God. Remember, nothing happened. Remember, this man by the name of Elijah stepped up and said, watch out. Said, I got to do something real quick. Hey, this didn't take long. Hey, you remember Elijah built an altar up there, dug a trench around it, took 4 barrels of water, and poured those barrels of water 3 times. Filled them up 3 times and poured them in that trench. It's full of water. Remember, Elijah just prayed a few little simple prayers. And man, God brought fire down from heaven. Hey, the Bible said it consumed everything. It took all the water, all the dust and everything up off that altar. And you remember what Elijah done out of that? He began to thank his God. Then he looked at those prophets of Baal and said, slay them. Hey, Elijah and his men killed all them prophets of Baal. Hey, we're talking a man right here that was just telling Ahab and Jezebel the truth. Hey, these prophets, those 400 were trained by Ahab and Jezebel. They were their buddies. And you remember Jezebel finds out what's happened, that Elijah's had all these men killed. She sends word to Elijah and said, buddy, by this time tomorrow, I'm going to do the same thing to you that you done to my men. We're going to have you killed. Old Jezebel pretty much looks at him and says, I don't care if God's on your side. I don't care if you pray fire down from heaven. Jezebel pretty much looks at him and said, I don't care what's going on. You messed up my plans. You messed up my little clique. We're going to have you killed by tomorrow. Hey, Jezebel didn't realize God had other plans. Right. Hey, she couldn't take the straight preaching that Elijah had to give her. You remember over in 1 Kings chapter 22 when Ahab had them 400 false prophets come and preach to him and give him a word? You remember there was a man by the name of Jehoshaphat asked Ahab if there wasn't another prophet in the land that he could listen to other than these men? You remember Ahab and Jehoshaphat in 1 Kings chapter 22 and verse 8? Jehoshaphat said, there is not one man that we can listen to that's of God. And Ahab looks back at him and says, yeah, there's one. But I hate him. He was talking to a man by the name of Micah, man. He told him the truth. He said, I don't like what he tells me, and he comes around. He tells me that these things are going to happen. He's always negative. He don't ever have nothing good to say to me. Hey, something was wrong with these two. They didn't like to hear the straightforwardness of Micah or Elijah, either one. They didn't like to hear the truth. And you know, I believe there's something wrong with somebody. They've got an authority problem and they detest preaching when they don't like a man that gets up and tells their children the truth. Hey, I'd rather have a man get up and talk to my children pretty rough and tell them the truth. And somebody get up here and sugarcoat things and tell them it's going to be all right. Hey, yeah, things are going to be all right if you've got God. But we've got this religion or this junk out there that's anymore. If a man of God gets up in a lot of churches and preaches straight, he'll never go back again. They want a feel-good religion. They want it where they can fill the pews up. They want it where they can get a big number on the board, a big offering. They think that's what's doing it. Hey, when we don't have the power of God, if people don't like straight preaching anymore, something's wrong. We're talking about Ahab, a man of God's people, got hooked up with this wicked woman, then he don't like preaching anymore. Don't like it straight from God. Man, I've known men that's got hooked up with women like that before. Good godly men, and the next thing you know, they're gone. Hey, there's nothing any better than a good godly woman. And I'm not giving women a hard time this morning, but you know one of the wickedest, meanest things I've ever seen is a woman that's got the devil in her. Hey, they're not like men when they get mad at you. They'll do things differently. Most men will just get out and fight things out and get it over. Women handle things differently like Jezebel's doing here. Man, if you've got a good godly woman, man, you better be glad. You ought to fall on your knees and thank God. Hey, this woman and man, they had some weak spots in their home. I'll give you one more thing about these two. was a weak spot in Ahab and Jezebel's home. I'm going to kind of say it like this morning. This was a woman that dressed real worldly. And I'll show you what I'm talking about here in just a minute. Remember I mentioned 2 Kings chapter number 9 a minute ago. You'll find Jehu. He comes to town. He's the man that killed Ahab and Jezebel's son. He comes to town in 2 Kings chapter number 9 and down verse number 30. You'll find when Jehu comes to town, you'll find the Bible says that Jezebel's up there painting her face. And she sticks her head out the window. Hey man, I don't find nowhere she's ever painting her face up for Ahab. Hey, this woman, the Bible said she painted her face and she stuck her head out the window. I wonder if she was trying to draw Jehu's attention. Hey man, can you imagine Jehu comes into town running and that wicked woman sticks her head out the window painted up? Man, this was God's man. He wasn't looking for some woman. I believe he began to gag when he seen that. And you remember the Bible tells us there in 2 Kings chapter 9 and verse 32, Jehu looks up and says, is there anybody up there on our side? Remember there was 2 or 3 eunuchs popped up there and was on the side of God. Jehu looks at them eunuchs and pretty much says, you throw that old bat down here. She's up there with her face painted. And them eunuchs throws her out the window, and the Bible says that her blood even splattered up on the horses. Hey, God sent his man to town to take care of this. Jehu said in 2 Kings chapter 9 and verse 22, said she was full of whoredoms. Hey, I'm telling you what the Bible says. Let me say something. You can't find anywhere in this book that says that Jezebel was unfaithful to Ahab. Hey, you can't find anywhere in this book that she was out running around with any other man. It's not there. But the Bible said she was full of whoredoms. Said she was full of witchcraft. I wonder if it may have been a lot of the ways she looked. The Bible said she painted her face up. May have been a lot of the way that she dressed. You know, Ahab had a woman here that he couldn't control. You know, the Bible talks about over in 1 Timothy chapter number 2, verse 9 and 10, it talks about modest apparel. According, I believe this woman may have been walking around trying to get this man to look at her. Maybe been trying to draw attention to herself. You know, I'm not picking on the women in their dress. Men ought to dress right also. You know, but a lot of times it's a lot easier for a man to cover his body up than it is a woman, seems like. You know, the only time a woman, I believe, will pull her eye to another man is when she's not right with God. Hey, a woman that's right with God's not going to try to draw the attentions of another man. You know, if you're dressing to try to draw somebody's attention, you ought to get right with God. Hey, man, you think about what this woman's doing right here. And you know what scares me anymore? We got a world that may be a whole lot like Jezebel was. And what scares me, a lot of this stuff is coming right into the house of God. Yeah. You know, it's a shame you go to a lot of churches anymore. You can't tell the preacher's wife from anybody else. They're dressing just like the world, looking just like anybody else. You know, when you come to the house of God, if you go anywhere and cover your body up in order to be in the house of God. Hey, we've got a generation of nakedness right now. And you know, that's what seems like it's going everywhere. And you know, it's a shame. A lot of times you've got to come into the house of God. You see women coming in having to pull at their skirts, keep them down, they're so short. You've got women that's having to pull at the blouse to keep it up. Man of God's afraid to look back and he might see something he shouldn't. We've got that stuff in our choirs, man. We've got deacon's wife doing that, preacher's wife, teacher's wife's doing that. And you know, you look at the man, a man ought to look like a man. He ought to not look feminine. Hey, we ought to teach these boys they need to pull their pants up and get them off their knees. Man, we ought to tell these boys they need to get these earrings out of their ears. They're not girls. Hey, a man ought to look like a man, ought to cut his hair like a man. He ought to look like something when he comes to the house of God. I know some of these things, a lot of folks don't like them in the day and time we're living in, but they're weak spots that's killing our homes. Hey, you don't find anywhere in this book right here that Jezebel ever painted up for Ahab. Hey, me and my wife's going to have problems if she ever begins to paint up for somebody other than me. And ain't some of these outfits wants to run makeup and stuff down like that. There's nothing wrong with these women fixing up. There's some crowds detest that, say you're going to go to hell if you do this, that, or the other. It ain't in the book. There's nothing wrong for them wanting to look good for their husbands. Nothing wrong for a man wanting to fix up, look good for his wife. Paul was a man that wasn't married. But Paul said it was better to marry than to burn. Paul was saying that it was better to be obligated to that person. You think about it in this sense. I'm not speculating. I'm just speculating a little bit right here. But I wonder if Ahab ever tried to touch Jezebel, that she just said, "Don't touch me, leave me alone." These things I don't like to even get into in mixed company or even get into in the house of God. But when God put man and woman together, they've got responsibility to each other. I've got a responsibility to my wife, and she does me. We're supposed to take care of each other's needs, affectionately love each other. That's the reason a lot of homes are falling apart. Seems like husbands and wives has went the other direction, don't want anything to do with each other, don't even pay any attention to each other anymore. This home right here, I wonder if God looked at the way this woman was dressing and said, "That's a weak spot in your home." We've got our homes, man, is something in order to be precious to us. It was the first great institution that God ever created. God put it together as man and woman. He never put man and man or woman and woman together. Put man and woman together. And it's a great institution, the first thing He ever created. But we got a lot of homes that's got weak spots in them this morning. The home is something we ought to pray over, and we ought to pray over daily. It's something, man, it's gotten such a mess. Don't seem like our government cares about it anymore. They want the home to be just this, that, or the other. But until our homes get back and get these weak spots out of them, we'll never see our churches progress the way they should. I want us to stand to our feet for just a minute.